Alright, hello. I made a quick review of this 16 by 24 covered patio, and I wanted to show you the things I encountered and what I ended up with. I'm sure I'm not exactly where you want to be, but all this stuff needed to be done anyway, just as a starting point. First of all, I started by trying to use stick framing, but it took 2x8s to do that, and using 2x8s and keeping this alignment down here with the beam, etc. The minimum size beam is going to be a couple 2x10s. There's not room to use the 2x8s and get that bearing correctly. And I mean, there's just, you could do something like this with 2x12s, but you've still got the issue of your ceiling joists coming across here. So I abandoned stick framing because they also wanted those at 16 inches on center. So I abandoned that stick framing altogether and went to a truss framed solution over that whole area and up onto the roof as well. Presumably they would just make these like this. I don't know if they make them like this, or you would just add your additional pieces with bearing plate up here. But I came back to this just to confirm how we're going to get those trusses supported at this house end. I mean, the idea is that those come in and sit on wherever those wall plates are. But if we did that, if those wall plates are at that 97 1/8, we try to get this alignment out here, we don't have any bottom chord bearing, as you can see. So those trusses have got to come down a little bit. I'm assuming that interior wall plate is at 8'1 1/8", standard kind of thing for that age. And that's there. And the idea is that those trusses, the existing trusses, those get trimmed off here at the outside of that wall, and then possibly some 2x10 vertical pieces are put in so that we can drop these trusses, the new trusses, we can drop those down as needed and use hangers to hold them, and then the rest of this is built up from there. This, when I did this solution, I had started with a higher pitch roof, like 2.412, going all the way up to the ridge of this. But I brought that down to straight 212. The minimum you can have shingles. You still have to put ice and water shield over it all, no matter what. But I brought that down to 212, and that reduced some of its area and let us drop that truss. That's dropped 2 inches. I think we probably only need to drop it about 1 inch, which is what's shown here. You drop that 1 inch, you have this bottom chord bearing, which I assume will be enough for them. You can see we've only dropped it about 1 inch to get this alignment to work out here. And so this is what the floor plan looks like, the floor plan and the foundation plan. It's going to take these three 18 by 18. Really, this is the only one that needs to be 18 by 18. These ones will be quite a bit less, but up the top anyway, I have them formed off at 18 by 18. This has to be 18 by 18 all the way down to 32 below. These you could just drill a couple 12-inch holes and then form the top off at 18 by 18 to match those others, or match that middle one. Alright, I returned to this to double check some of this information and make sure that it was good. And I'm glad I did, because apparently I hadn't accounted for some of the loading, some of this roof loading, probably this soffit overhang, or I know it's a soffit overhang on this beam here. So I returned to this to double check that. And you can see, by the way, that this is just a fake box beam, and that is suspended on framing from the trusses. But returning to this single span, this either of these spans or the whole thing, either way, they are now failing. It's a close call, 104%, but they're failing using 2x10s. 2x12s pass, but that's immaterial because we don't have the room to push that up or down. So we have to go to micro lambs for that. And these are cheaper, but they're not available in your zip code. So this is what's going to be shown on the plans at this point, is these two 8-inch micro limbs, and what's good about that is that those will cover the whole thing in one span without having to seam them on that middle column, which, by the way, the middle column has to be a 5.5 inch column, but these two end ones can be 3.5s if you want. They're shown as 5.5s on the plan, but they can be 4.5 or 3.5s, 4x4s instead of 6x6s. And so you go to the two 8-inch LVLs, and that gets modified like that. So you don't have this seam here anymore. You just have one piece that goes all the way across. And the only other thing to consider then is the loading, because that increased as well at that foundation, at that center column. It was 3264, and now it's moved to 4300. So, and the side ones are nothing. The two ends are nothing. Those can get by with 12 inches or so. But this last one here, this one in the middle, that's going to have to be increased in size. And really that's about it for that whole interjection. The rest of this will apply, except this one here will still be, in the photographs you're going to see, this one will still be shown 18 inches wide. But otherwise, that's the upshot of that little double check. We go here to this outside, because I didn't want to have this downspout out here, and I think this is kind of what you mentioned, but I provided for this gutter to return all the way around and go back to the building by this typical method here. And this is the section view through that. The way that light lined up with this beam is pretty nice. And the only difference, this was an earlier version. This was showing us 5.5 inch piece up here, and this is probably going to be closer to a 4.5 inch piece, a 1x4.5 up there. And then these are the elevations, and this was that tall pitch, that 2.412 pitch, and I dropped that down to 2, and you can see it's a lot less roof for one thing, and still the same treatment, still the same longevity of the shingles. Anything between 212 and 412 is going to have that ice and water shield over the entire surface and up the valley, etc. And from this end, this was the higher pitch at plan A, and we dropped that in plan B. And then these are just some exterior interpretations of that same result. These columns here are just shown finished square, but I mean, you could use standard type columns like this on those. And from that room looking out this way, those are two different looks on that. So hopefully that will at least get us started on where you need to be on this. Everything's practically drawn as far as construction drawings. I just had to put them into a sheet for that. So call me when it's convenient and we can talk about all this. Thanks very much.